On the 20th, Sergeant at Arms informs prison to allow Premalal Jayasekara to come to Parliament. A new Sports Act to be introduced and the Sports Council's duties to be broadened. Minister of Sports reveals his plans after assuming duties. The police unit of the Presidential Commission of Inquiry probing the April 21st attacks records statements from Ruwan Wijewardena and Shani Abesekara.
A very good Tuesday evening. This is Primetime News. I'm Joel Outkun. We are starting off the news with a look at a story which has been making headlines and also the talk of the time, I would say, in the entire country. Now, the entire nation faced a power outage yesterday, and what is the current situation as of now? We need to find out an in-depth analysis on this power outage which was faced by the country and what is the way forward. For that comprehensive update, we now cross over to the newsroom to Chaturanga, who is standing by to give us an in-depth analysis on the power outage faced by the entire nation. Chaturanga, over to you.
Thank you, Joel. We are looking at a situation where everyone is concerned about when the power will be disrupted in our particular areas. What do we know right now? We know that there will be a 1 hour power cut, but when we checked with the authorities, the Ceylon Electricity Board, we now know that it is not a 1 hour power cut, but about 2 hours or 1 hour and 45 minutes to be very precise. That is the time duration of the power cut. These areas will be divided as A, B, C and D, and these areas will be experiencing intermittent power cuts, several in the morning and another few in the evening as well. Everyone's concern is, however, about the city of Colombo and how the power cut will affect us living in Colombo. Will this affect Greater Colombo, or will this only affect the Colombo city or Colombo 1 to Colombo 15 are questions that everyone is asking. However, from what we know at the moment and what we have been able to verify with regard to this particular incident, the power crisis at the moment, from the trade unions attached to the CEB, is that Colombo will be experiencing, I'm sure our producers will be able to put up on screen the areas that have been demarcated by the CEB with regard to how the power cut will be initiated or happen. There are 4 areas that have been divided, A, B, C and D. However, if we closely analyze these areas and how they have been segmented, these areas do not include Colombo or any city or town located in the Greater Colombo area. This is because the feeders or how the electricity generation happens in these areas cannot be isolated, because there are multiple feeders in the city of Colombo, including Greater Colombo. So what we know right now is that there will be power cuts in Colombo as per the time schedule that has been given, irrelevant of whether it is in A, B or C or D, because the city of Colombo has been mentioned in the list A, B, C and D. You can see for us in this list, however, that the group C and D is what you see here, but Colombo has not been mentioned, as I said earlier. So the power cut will happen in Colombo. It's not like we are exempt from the power cut, but the power cut will happen in Colombo, but a feeder has not been mentioned. It says Colombo city 30 megawatts from primary sub. So the time frame that has been allocated for A, B, C and D will all affect Colombo. So there could be, basically in simple terms, could be a power cut at any time in Colombo as per the given timetable.
Absolutely. And that is not good news for anyone.
Yes,
including obviously the people in Colombo and the rest of the country. It's a shocking state of affairs.
For us now, we have to listen to the CEB officials as to what they say. This is their explanation. Vijitha Herath is the chairman of the Ceylon Electricity Board. This is what he had to say. Let's quickly listen to him and come back and analyze where we are at the moment with regard to this power crisis.
We have divided the country into 4 zones. We will impose power cuts from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m., 7 p.m. to 8 p.m., 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. and 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. over the next 4 days. We have to do this due to an unavoidable circumstance. We wish to express our deep regret to the public. We must have power stations on standby in the future.
That is Vijitha Herath, the chairman of the CEB. Now that is what will happen in the 4 days. Now let's quickly for us go back and see why we are in this location in this situation rather in the first place. We know that a lot of attention was drawn to the Norochole coal power plant.
Yes.
Newsfirst, along with several other media institutions, reported the bad impacts of Norochole, how it has affected the environment, how it has affected the people. However, there was continuous efforts to ensure that Norochole and similar power plants in the country function and thrive. And this has been something that we have seen up until last year, until this whole election happened. And even right now, while we speak, a major portion of the incident or this scenario is as a result of the coal power plant. So for us, where are we in terms of this coal power plant and why are we still talking about it?
We're talking about it because unfortunately the coal power plant has not delivered what was envisaged of using a coal power plant. Around 40% of Sri Lanka's power requirements is dependent on the Norochole coal power plant, and when it breaks down, it's obvious that we are going to have a serious problem. Some people continuously say that the breakdown comes through is not really a breakdown, but it is planned. But you can't, for heaven's sake, have so many planned outages. And if you do have planned outages, you must have the alternative in place. That's obvious.
We are coming to a very interesting point for us. Let's listen to Anuradha Tilaka Ratna, the CEB Engineers Union chairman, and let's listen to what he had to say and come back.
Since the 900 megawatt Norochole power plant had failed, we have to restore its power to the national grid. The power supply had not broken down, instead it had stopped. It will require 4 to 5 days to be restored. The water released by the power plant is of very high temperature. It heats up to more than 1000 degrees Celsius. Therefore, the water must be cooled first. We cannot do that immediately. Once the temperature of the water is brought down gradually, we will restore its power generation. Our engineers are in the process of doing that. We are working around the clock. It has been 10 years since the Norochole power plant began operations. Since it has been in operation for 10 years, we must be able to carry out maintenance activities. Now it can be observed that we haven't reached the capacity yet. This has always prompted us to ask for assistance from China. Therefore, this is a very serious issue. All 3 power generation units at the Lakvijay power station became inactive as it took more time to rectify the power failure yesterday. 1 power generation unit had tripped. Since we could not infuse power from the other 2 units into the national grid, we have to shut down the plant. It will take some time before the power plant is activated once more. Until then, we will have to obtain power through diesel-powered plants. This will result in a loss of 7 billion daily. There is a wind power plant near Norochole. We can generate 60 megawatts through that. However, its transformer had malfunctioned a month ago. Therefore, we are unable to obtain power from that. Why did the transformer break down? That is because it had not been maintained in a proper manner.
As I said earlier, this is not the first time that we are talking about the lapses of the Norochole coal power plant. Be it the environmental impact that this has caused to the country, especially to the people living in that area, or be it to the actual loss that it has resulted to the people. All of us as a country, we have been constantly reporting on the Norochole coal power plant. For us, my question is slightly different now. We are looking at a situation where we are constantly talking about the Norochole coal power plant and its negative impact. However, if you listen to look at the attitude of the officials who are in these high positions. Now we are talking about educated so-called engineers, so-called people who can handle these things, capable people, have a very negative attitude towards looking at alternatives, looking at renewable energy and things like that.
I dare say, Chaturanga, that this is coming about because there is what we call a diesel mafia, and this mafia has been going on for well over 25 years, and right from the beginning we've had players in this market who have made it their sort of lifetime achievement to corrupt these young engineers who are now, of course, in positions of grave trust, and therefore they pay scant attention to what the whole world is looking for. renewable energy, solar and so on.
For us, the viewers watching us from home may think that we are being unfair when we say that the people holding office or the officials are having a negative attitude towards this.
Well,
But
shall I give you a glaring example of
Please
that?
go ahead.
We've been having emergency power from the year dot. It started in earnest in 1994-96. So a quarter of a century later, we do not own even 30 megawatts of mobile power which we can use in terms of an emergency. We currently in cabinet we've got recently a maximum exposure of $65 million for emergency power. We have Umaoya, which has not been, they haven't finished paying them, so they don't finish it. We have another proposal for around another 200 megawatts of emergency power. And that is why I say that these people have got no commitment to the lasting power solution in Sri Lanka, a regular power supply.
Yes, Faraz. Now, this is what the chairman or the CEB, we are going to listen to him once again. This is why I tell you that these officials have a very negative impact towards renewable energy sources, especially solar. This is what he had to say. Let's take a listen to this first.
We are in the process of finding out the reason for this power outage. There has been a technical failure at the Kerawalapitiya subgrid. We were able to restore power that is supplied to the southern province from the Samanala plant at around 4-5 p.m. yesterday. We tried to restore power to the Colombo district by starting hydropower plants and thermal power plants. Because Colombo is of utmost importance when a breakdown of this magnitude takes place. There are a large number of hospitals located in Colombo. Also, it is a priority to supply water to Colombo. Although we tried to restore the power back in Colombo, it was delayed due to various reasons. We will look into the reasons as to why, but at the moment our gut feeling is the solar panels that have been fixed at houses without no proper plan. They fix solar panels and that gets added to our system. Even the system control unit does not know as to how many solar panels are there. Yesterday we experienced a massive heat. And as a result of that, these solar panels operated at a very high level. The engineers think that it must have been a reason as to why we couldn't restore power soon. We think it is important to follow technical guidelines when fixing these solar panels, especially taking into account what transpired yesterday. Because by evening, we were able to restore power to Colombo.
Now for us, this can be looked in two ways. This can either be looked at in a way where we simply put it in simple terms, saying that the officials have a very negative image towards renewable energy, and we could leave it at that. However, it runs deeper, in my opinion, for us, where we are looking at a situation where CEB officials who, when the world, the entire world, when even our former president went to France and said, this is our commitment towards a sort of a renewable energy sort of a system, we are looking at officials still talking negatively about renewable power systems that we have available to us as a country right now. If the government and these officials are not able to connect the existing solar power that is coming into the national grid, then for us there is a problem there itself.
The CEB and all its engineers are quite familiar with all the options because they are professional people. But unfortunately, I dare say that most of them have, and the people who matter, have fallen foul, and they have been consumed by this so-called lobby, the diesel lobby and the coal lobby, who are deliberately leaving aside the renewable energy options available not only in Sri Lanka but all over the world. And that is a sad and shameful fact, because the engineers and the planners, they have no commitment whatsoever. And it's almost treacherous and traitorous for them to do this.
For us, we can ask two questions at this moment. We can ask these officials as to whether their plan or their intent is to push the government into buying power. That is what is happening right now.
Absolutely.
We are at a crisis right now. We need power.
That is what they're doing.
Exactly. The first question is this an attempt by the officials to push the government, to pressurize the government into buying power from independent power suppliers? And the second question is, are these officials trying to actually get the government to encourage coal power plants instead of renewable energy sources? That is the question for us.
Absolutely. Whatever that it is that they're doing, they're not choosing the options in a good mix to ensure Sri Lanka's regular power supply. They need that. And you know, if we look at regular power, we need that as much as we need the rule of law and so on. If we are to attract foreign direct investment, we simply will not attract big business without a regular power supply.
And for us, the other point is that we are making these emergency power purchases at a time the country's economy has been hampered by COVID-19. We are looking at a situation where the economy is already in trouble.
Which is why I say that the actions of these officials is absolutely treacherous and traitorous.
Absolutely. What has happened in the past? Why are we saying all this? This is what happened in our country. Let's have a look.
An island-wide power failure had taken place on the 9th of October 2009. The Public Utilities Commission that conducted an inquiry had submitted recommendations to the Ceylon Electricity Board in a bid to prevent such incidents from taking place. However, a review was not carried out to monitor whether these recommendations had been implemented. Island-wide power failures were reported thrice since then. They were on the 27th of February 2015, 25th of February 2016 and the 13th of March 2016. The Public Utilities Commission that resubmitted its recommendations to the CEB in 2016 had instructed the Electricity Board to implement a long-term plan to prevent electricity breakdowns in future. At the time of making these recommendations, the transmission system had to be upgraded to accommodate solar-powered electricity generated by households into the national grid. Instead of taking such action, the Engineers Union of the CEB is considering solar power as an issue. A committee was appointed when the island-wide power failure was reported in February 2016. There was a recommendation made by the committee clearly stating that the transmission system is weak and that our National System Control Centre had not rectified the issue. It adds that the technology used in this matter is outdated. We established a System Control Centre in 2018. Against such a backdrop, why are electricity breakdowns taking place? There were experienced technical officers in the centre. They have been removed from office, leaving behind the engineers. We feel that there is a problem with re-establishing this centre once more. When an engineer joins the CEB, he knows how to retire. Whether he is a DGM, AGM or the GM, they know they can retire with a pension. Therefore, they remain idle without undertaking any sort of responsibility. There is a mafia involving these officers. There is a political mafia. Then there is a mafia involving businessmen as well. It is a mafia combining all of these aspects that are operating in the Ceylon Electricity Board. Ultimately, the people have to bear the brunt of these activities. They don't implement any recommendation. Who is responsible for implementing these recommendations? It is the officers of the CEB. In the past, committees were appointed only to calm the people. The committee reports on previous incidents of this nature have not been released. If it was done, this situation would not have arisen. Although this is an unavoidable incident, the inconvenience faced by the people could have been minimized. We wish to state this committee is also a farce. We cannot observe that a proper plan is in place. This is a serious situation.
This tussle, this tug-of-war between the officials and the trade unions have existed for a while as well. It has existed probably as long as these mafias have existed for us. And we are looking at a situation once again where the trade unions are claiming one thing and the officials, however, are saying this is all because we couldn't initiate the long-term generation plan that has been set by the CEB engineers. Indeed. Let's listen to the CEB chairman once more and then further analyze this situation.
It has been 6 years since the last 400 megawatt power plant was incorporated into the national grid. That was in 2014. In the past, we as engineers demanded that a new power plant be constructed. We didn't want small power plants that generate 20 megawatts of power. We wanted a stable power plant that can generate 300 megawatts of power. By next year, we will require 300 additional megawatts of power. When this government ascended into power, they immediately allowed a tender for the 300 megawatt LNG power plant through the cabinet. That is because we need 300 megawatts of electricity immediately. We have to invite bids for another LNG power plant as well. I am requesting to immediately attend to this matter. I am making this request to the government as we cannot move forward without it.
For us, This is slightly funny. This is almost a joke for us.
If it wasn't so serious.
If it wasn't so serious, and if it didn't involve the people's money to this extent, this would be a joke. For us now, these officials are pulling the whole incident in one direction. The trade unions are pulling it in another direction. However, at the end of the day, we are looking at a situation where we have lists of where the power will be cut in our country, and we do not know how the power will be cut in Colombo for that matter as well. Now, let's quickly go back to the past. Again, people who are holding very serious positions, people whose names have been brought in front of institutions like the COPE, or they have retired from the positions that they held, and nothing has happened.
They've left us in a mess, and they've retired. That's what it is.
Whole incident started. This person's name, Dr. Suren Batakoda, Secretary to the Ministry of Power and Energy.
The Chief Accounting Officer of that ministry.
The highest public servant in that particular ministry, the Secretary.
Absolutely. The Secretary of the ministry, to any ministry, is actually the Chief Accounting Officer, and all responsibility will fall there. And it is absolutely shameful and disgraceful. The legacy that, unfortunately, Dr. Batagoda has left the entire country in Chaturanga. It is inexcusable. We have retired people who have served the country in terms of the war and so on, who had their pensions stopped and started and so on. But these people, they retire rather well, and no action is being taken against any of them.
We are only talking about this for us because this involves, as I said, a lot of public funds.
Absolutely.
And we are looking at a situation where we are used to this system where politicians, usually the finger is pointed at the politician to say, this politician is corrupt. But the officials are appointed.
It is the officials who are stopping the progress of the power ministry. There's absolutely no two words about that. The officials pull out all sorts of stunts and confuse the ministers, who are of course non-technical. You can't expect them. You have to have the ministers on the side, but the actual work gets done through the secretary to the ministry.
We also remember for us when the Auditor General, a former Auditor General, tried to bring the surcharge through to make sure that these officials are held accountable. We remember the opposition that was created from the state sector itself to stop this from happening. Maybe if things like these instruments that are there by law, maybe if these things were used, maybe we wouldn't have to talk like this for several minutes about the corruption that is going on right in front of our eyes, where a lot of our money is wasted. For us, another factor that we should keep in mind is that, yes, okay, we're talking about the electricity issue, there is a crisis, there is a problem, we know this. But while this is the case, when the electricity is disrupted or there is a breakdown, the water supply of the country is also affected. This is again, if this was, as you said, not so serious, people would laugh at this situation, because we are looking at a situation, this is a country, and I don't think even an office building in another country would not have an alternative like this, like we have in Sri Lanka.
All of this suggests a fundamental need to restructure the way our civil service works and how officials are held accountable and responsible. There is absolutely no point giving them all sorts of benefits, pensions and this, that and the other, if they cannot deliver upon the people's needs. And it is an absolutely shameful, disgraceful event that has happened today. On top of the power, as you say, the water.
For us, we have to listen to what the Water Supply Board Chairman, Mr. N.R. Ranawaka, the Vice Chairman of the National Water Supply and Drainage Board, has to say as well. Overall, before we go, for us, we are looking at a situation where the country will experience about 1 hour and 45-minute power cut. Colombo, we are not yet clear as to when that power cut will be. However, we are certain that there will be a power cut in Colombo as well as the other areas in the country. We are looking at a situation where we do not have an alternative, where when it comes to, if there's a power cut in the country, we also lose the water supply to the country. There should have been an alternative. We should have looked at alternatives, and at least now at least learn from this incident and go forward. We have to at this moment remember that there have been two new ministers that have been appointed, Dalasala Peruma for electricity and power and Vasudeva Nanayakara for the water supply. Two individuals who are very senior politicians in the country. We hope for us that these politicians do not get entangled in this mafia, do not get pressurized by the clause and all these pressurizing techniques that are used by the mafia. I use that word very responsibly because we have seen techniques being used to pressurize and intimidate the ministers in certain ways. We hope that these two gentlemen do not get entangled in this. They make the right call and at least take measures now after learning from this incident to ensure that this does not happen in the future. Let's now listen to the Vice Chairman of the National Water Supply and Drainage Board.
Meanwhile, the National Water Supply and Drainage Board has said that it will review the drop in water pressure that was caused due to the absence of an electricity generator during the power breakdown. We had electricity generators in some areas, but we did not have them in other areas. It was the areas in which we did not have the generators that were affected. We will conduct a review to identify the locations that require generators and supply them. If there is a problem in the purification of water in a water treatment plant, that water cannot be released.
In more news this evening, the Police Special Task Force has seized counterfeit currency to the value of 1 billion rupees in Mullaeriyawa today.
The raid had been carried out by the Police Special Task Force in the Galvana area in Mullaeriyawa. According to the Police Special Task Force, the counterfeit currency notes had been seized after a vehicle was searched. 3 suspects in the vehicle have been taken into custody by the STF. Police said that 128 counterfeit notes bearing a face value of 5,000 rupees each had been seized at the time of the arrest. Accordingly, the total face value of the counterfeit currency stood at more than 1 billion rupees. The suspects are residents of Mullaeriyawa, Angoda and Jayala. They are 34, 37 and 42 years old. The Special Task Force said that the suspects along with the fake currency and vehicle have been handed over to the Mullaeriyawa police.
It is alleged that certain names of those who had been given previous appointments have been removed from the published list of employed graduates. Now, a group of trade unions staged a protest in Colombo and complained with the officials.
A group from the Joint Unemployed Graduates Association gathered near the Fort Railway Station and voiced their objection against the matter today. The group then marched towards the Presidential Secretariat. They charged that certain names published in March have been taken off from the new list. Protesters point out that those who previously worked in the private sector have been removed from the new list, considering the membership of the Employees Provident Fund.
The names of 40,092 have been rejected this time. 9,554 have been blocked because of ETI. We have been asking them not to politicize this matter from the beginning. They assured us that there are no party differences and everyone was given a fair opportunity. But is this what has been done? You may have obtained the 2/3 majority in parliament, but remember that 2/3 majority among those who are involved in the struggle is with us on the streets.
The group of protesters was later allowed to present their issue to the officials of the Presidential Secretariat. Following a discussion that lasted for around 1 hour, the group of protesters left the premises.
We held discussions with the President's coordinating secretary. He said that a favourable response will be given within 2 weeks. We will give the government time until September. If we don't receive a solution, we will take to the streets on the 3rd of September.
Meanwhile, a group of graduates from foreign and private universities complained with the Presidential Public Relations Division near the Presidential Palace in Fort. The group charged that they have lost the opportunity to secure government jobs based on the universities that awarded their degrees. Among them were those who obtained government jobs last March and have now been removed from the list due to degrees they have obtained from private universities.
විදේශ රටක හෝ UGC approval විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයක සුදුසුකම් තියෙනවා නම් ප්‍රමාණවත් කියලා තිබුණා ගැසට් නිවේදනයට අනුව දැනට අපි කණ්ඩායමේ ඉන්නවා ළමයි 300කගේ පමණ නම් අයින් කරලා තියෙනවා. මේ අපිට පළවෙනි පාර ඔක්කොම පත්වීම් ලිපි ආවා සහ අපි ඒව පත්වීම් ලිපි බාරගත්තා ගිහිල්ලා. ඊට පස්සේ අපිට මේ දෙවෙනි පාර නාම ලේඛනයේ rejected list එකේ තමයි අපි ඉන්නේ. අපිට යාලා ඉල්ලපු සුදුසුකම් සේරම තියෙනවා. කලින් යාලා ඉල්ලපු විදිහට UGC approve කියලාත් අපි ගාව තියෙනවා සාක්ෂි. ඒ වුණාට යාලා කිසිම පදනමක් රහිතව අපිව අයින් කරලා තියෙනවා. අපිට කැම්පස් යන්න බැරි වුණාට හරි අපි මෙහි කැම්පස් එකට ගියේ නැති වුණාට හරි අපිටත් අයිතියක් තියෙනවා රජයේ රැකියාවක් කරන්න. සල්ලි තියනවා කියලා නෙමෙයි අපි ප්‍රයිවට් කැම්පස් ගියේ. විශ්වවිද්‍යාල ලංකාව තුල තියෙන විශ්වවිද්‍යාල ප්‍රමාණවත් නැති හින්දා අපි A-level results දාලා අපිත් ගියේ. අපි ෆේල් වෙලා නෙමෙයි ඉගෙන ගත්තා. අපි නුසුදුසුයි නම් අපි මේකට ඇප්ලයි කරන්නේ නැහැ.
Meanwhile, several graduate associations convened a joint media briefing in Colombo today at the National Centre for Graduates.
The government issued letters of appointment to 49,000 trainees on the 2nd of March. The parliament was dissolved at that time, but the chairman of the National Election Commission temporarily halted those appointments. If the government had carefully examined the qualifications of the trainees to whom they gave the appointment letters, the government would not have halted this. But the government revoked their decision after 6 months. So does that mean that they gave the appointment letters to the wrong people in March? What are the reasons they give? They say people among the 49,000 have been employed in the private sector. Is it us who have to manage this? They selected the trainees according to their own agendas and gave the appointment letters. The trainee graduates went to the relevant institutions and signed the documents on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th and the 5th of March. The graduates who already assumed their duties have been terminated from their positions. What did the government do? They gave these appointments targeting the election.
A group from the Joint Development Officers Centre also visited the Ministry of National Policies and Economic Affairs today. They charged that the appointments of development officers granted by the previous government through this ministry have not been confirmed yet.
16,500 graduates were enrolled by the Ministry of Economic Affairs in 2019. The training period of those who joined a year ago is coming to an end on the 2nd. They worked at ministries and departments, but the Ministry of Economic Policies now says that they cannot take responsibility. Only the President knows what happened to the previous ministry. So the employment of 16,500 graduates is uncertain.
Well, now the power cut timetable based on your local grid substations have been published by the Ceylon Electricity Board. In order for you to find out the time period in which your locality will be experiencing a power outage, you can do so by logging on to our website, that is www.newsfirst.lk. Moving on to more news here at home, the Youth and Sports Affairs Minister Nama Rajapaksa, upon assuming duties today, said that his primary task would be to introduce the new Sports Act.
Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and other family members were present as Nama Rajapaksa assumed duties at the Ministry of Youth and Sports Affairs.
Please pray for Mahaganavadiyam. Lambodharam Shilabhrivaganesham
After assuming duties amidst religious observances, Nama Rajapaksa expressed these views to Newsfirst.
ක්‍රීඩා ඉසව් රසක් පිළිබඳව විවිධ ගැටලු තිබෙනවා. ඒ සියල්ල ඔබ ඉදිරියේ තියෙන මොන වගේ පියවරක්ද ගැනීමට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ? 1973 හදපු ක්‍රීඩා පන්ත තමයි.
It is a sports act that was introduced in 1973 that has been amended. I feel that the first thing that we must do is introduce a new sports act in the country. There is no point in providing temporary remedies without addressing the main problem. Advise the Prime Minister and the President, we must hold talks with the Bar Association, Attorney General's Department and the Justice Minister and introduce a new sports act that will determine the sustenance of these sports. At present, all sports clubs are dependent on the government. In developed countries, sports generate 2 or 3% of the total revenue in the country. We are unable to reach that phase as we are still following the old regulations.
අපි තවම ඉන්නේ පැරණි 50 රෙගුලාසි මත තමයි යන්නේ. අපි ලෝක කුසලාන දෙකක් ජයග්‍රහණය කරපු රටක්. ක්‍රිකට් ක්‍රීඩාවට කොයි වගේ අනාගතයක් ඉදිකරන්නටද ඔබතුමා බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ? ක්‍රිකට් විතරක් නෑ හැම ක්‍රීඩාවම.
We must develop all sports and not just cricket. Therefore, the relevant bodies must operate independently. We must protect the transparency of those bodies and the sports ministry.
ඒ වගේම ක්‍රීඩා ආයතනවල විනිවිදභාවය ආරක්ෂා කරන්න අපි කටයුතු කරන්න ඕනේ. ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ තරුණ තරුණියන් වෙනුවෙන් මොන වගේ දැක්මක්ද ඔබතුමා සතුව තියෙන්නේ? ඉදිරි කාලේ අපි හඳුනා ගන්න ඕනේ.
In the future, we must identify the needs of the youth. We must produce youth who are suitable for the global market, whether it is vocational training, industrial training, small and medium scale enterprises or education reforms that are needed to facilitate this objective. We will take steps to implement them within a disciplined and cultural framework.
කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු ගමේ පිපෙන තරු ජාතික මට්ටමින් ජාත්‍යන්තරයට ඇවිල්ලා ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ නාමය ජාත්‍යන්තරයට ගෙන යන්නට ඔබතුමා සතුව තියෙන වැඩ පිළිවෙල මොන වගේද? ග්‍රාමීය ක්‍රීඩාව සංවර්ධනය කරන්න ඕන රටේ ක්‍රීඩාව.
To develop sports at a national level, they must be developed in a rural level. We will appoint a new sports council by next week. Professionals who can work with transparency and responsibility will be appointed to the sports council. We will vest them with the powers to develop sports from the rural to the national level.
මට්ටම ක්‍රීඩාව සංවර්ධනය කරන්න.
Two new directors have been appointed to the Director Board of the National Youth Services Council. The appointments were made by the Minister of Youth and Sports, Namal Rajapaksa.
Iraj Veeraratna and Tehani Imara were appointed to the Board of Directors of the National Youth Services Council. The Ministry of Youth and Sports announced that the appointment is for 3 years.
I was invited to take over this position by Minister Namal Rajapaksa. We need to promote digital media to the youth living in the rural areas. There are many things that can be achieved through digital media, but we do not see much of its usage out of Colombo. I was invited to encourage youth to use digital media. I took up this post willingly since I have been doing this. This is a method to draw in foreign exchange to the country. I have been given a new responsibility to uplift the youth.
A discussion was held at the Election Commission today on resolving the problems of the National List parliamentary seat of the Our Party of People Power.
Two factions that have laid claim to the position of General Secretary in the party were invited to the discussion. Today's discussion had ended in a stalemate. We discussed with the chairman of the National Election Commission. The commission had met today. They are due to meet tomorrow as well. The commission is yet to decide whether Wimala Tissatera or the name proposed by the current secretary will be accepted. Most probably it would be left vacant, but the commission is most likely to take a decision tomorrow. He is also experiencing several problems. During our discussion, we observed that if Wimala Tissatera is appointed, it would cause a big crisis. Therefore, we discussed with him. Those talks were successful. We cannot predict the decision that will be made. The commission will decide tomorrow.
The Batticaloa High Court today granted permission for Sivanes Thurai Chandrakanthan alias Pillayan to attend the first sitting of the new parliament. The 9th parliament is scheduled to be convened on Thursday, the 20th of August. A petition filed by Sivanes Thurai Chandrakanthan's lawyer was taken up today in the presence of Batticaloa High Court judge.
Sivanesa Thurai Chandrakanthan is the leader of the Tamil Makkal Vidudalai Puligal party, and he was elected to the parliament in the recently concluded parliamentary election after contesting from Batticaloa. Pillayan is charged for the murder of Joseph Pararajasingham, a former TNA parliamentarian of the Batticaloa district in 2005 and is currently in remand custody. Permission was granted for Ratnapura district MP Premalal Jayasekara, who is currently on death row, to attend the first session of the 9th Parliament. Premalal Jayasekara had forwarded the appeal submitted to the Court of Appeal against his death sentence to the Parliament of Sri Lanka. Thereby, the Sergeant-at-Arms of Parliament had submitted the appeal to the Prisons Department and requested permission for Premalal Jayasekara to attend the first session of the new Parliament on the 20th of August.
Former Criminal Investigations Department Director SSP Shani Abesekara, who is in remand, was escorted by prison guards to the police unit of the Presidential Commission probing the April 21st attacks today.
Former State Minister of Defence Ruwan Wijewardena also provided a statement to the police unit of the Presidential Commission probing the April 21st attacks this morning. Meanwhile, former State Intelligence Service Director SDIG Nilantha Jayawardena has said the SIS did not believe that the National Tawhid Jamaat group was prepared to carry out a terrorist attack. During a testimony at the Presidential Commission, the former SIS Director SDIG Nilantha Jayawardena said they had received foreign intelligence warnings about an impending attack on the 4th of April last year. However, he said that the SIS, despite not ignoring the warning, did not believe that the National Tawhid Jamaat group had the ability to carry out the attacks on key locations such as the Indian High Commission. According to the witness, the SIS had assumed that the ability of Zaharan Hashim and his associates had diminished after raiding a training camp in Vanathavilluwa on the 16th of January 2019. Jayawardena told the Commission that foreign intelligence had only identified the Indian High Commission as a definite target. He added that the intelligence report also spoke about important churches in general and did not indicate a threat to hotels. He also said that the High Commission would have followed certain special procedures like evacuations if they were satisfied with the intelligence information they received. Meanwhile, the former SIS director conceded that action was not taken to prevent the mastermind Zaharan Hashim from accessing his Facebook account on which he had published hate speech even after receiving intelligence warnings.
Meanwhile, former President Maithripala Sirisena has been ordered to appear at the police unit of the Presidential Commission on the 26th of August. Former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe and former Law and Order Minister Sadal Ratnayaka have been ordered to appear before the police unit on the 21st of August. Moving on, more news. The fire that erupted at the house that belongs to Jeevan Thondaman, the State Minister of Estate Houses and Community Infrastructure in Kothmale, has been doused. Now, the house is an ancestral house of the Thondamans and has been home for 3 generations of the family.
The fire had broken out around 3 a.m. today. The house is located in the Weverton estate. The police noted that the fire engines from the Nuwara Municipal Council, police officers at the Kothmale station and area residents were able to douse the fire. The house is said to have been constructed in the year 1883. State Minister Jeevan Thondaman, his father late Arumugam Thondaman and Satyamurthy Thondaman have lived in this house. A caretaker at the house, who is a Nepali national, and a worker had been at the location while the fire broke out. No one has been injured. The traditional furniture at the house had been destroyed in the fire. The damage, however, has not been ascertained as yet. Sendil Thondaman, who is a coordinating officer of the Prime Minister, and State Minister Jeevan Thondaman had arrived at the location to inspect the situation. The Government Analyst Department has commenced an investigation into the incident.
A suspect who is in the custody of the Negombo Remand Prison has died.
Presenting facts regarding the incident, prison officials informed the Minuangoda Magistrates Court that the suspect had died inside the prison complex last night. Prison officials further informed the court that the suspect was in remand custody over charges of attempting to rob a house by claiming to be officers of the Criminal Investigations Department. 2 suspects along with the deceased were arrested on the 14th. The deceased, Duminda Munasinghe, was a resident of Kehelella area. The remains of Duminda Munasinghe was taken to the Negombo prison after the magisterial inquiry. I was not allowed to see my son from the time we went to the station. I was not even allowed to speak to him when he was produced in courts. The Divlapitia police said that he died at the Negombo prison due to epilepsy. How can they conclude that? What are doctors for? When we were given the body, we saw the injuries on his face and the body. Even his hands and legs have suffered burns. My brother was taken to the Divlipiti hospital after a fight with the villagers. When we went there, we were not allowed inside, citing coronavirus as the reason. But he has been beaten and burnt. Please serve justice to my brother. Our correspondent reported that a brother of the deceased inmate had beaten a prison officer near the mortuary. The prison officer was admitted to the hospital following the incident. The individual, identified as the one who assaulted the prison officer, was taken into police custody. Meanwhile, the second suspect of the case, Lahiru Pradeep Madhusankar, was produced in court today, and the magistrate ordered the suspect to be released on a surety bail worth 200,000 rupees. It was also revealed in court today that the two suspects who attempted to rob a house in Hapualana, Maradagahamula, were caught and beaten by the area residents. The magistrate further ordered officials to investigate this incident and report facts to court. The case will be taken up again on the 6th of October.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has instructed the temporary suspension of road development work taking place near the Singharaja World Heritage Site. RDA Chairman Chaminda Atulwage, speaking to Newsfirst, said necessary action would be taken following a review if there is an issue regarding this project.
Road construction work to expand the road bordering the Singharaja forest, which is a World Heritage Site, commenced in the first week of August. The Forest Conservation Department said that an 8 feet wide road currently exists in the area and that it is being expanded to 12 feet. This was with the involvement of the Sri Lanka Army and the Road Development Authority.
Just because there are roads doesn't mean they need to be widened or developed. These roads are widened from 8 feet to 10 to 15 feet. What's shocking is that these are not being done with the written approval of the Wildlife Conservation Department and the Central Environmental Authority. This road is being constructed close to the Gin River across the massive land of the reserve. The Department of Irrigation has not been informed. When we inquired, the Divisional Secretariat was also not aware of this.
Dr. Vasantha Liyanage, Galle District Forest Officer, said that this road, which is being constructed on the border of the Singharaja Reserve, includes about 1,300 meters of the reserve in 3 places. He said that the Road Development Authority has requested to construct a road across the reserve last week. The Galle District Forest Officers who conducted the study have informed the Forest Department about the recommendations. They recommend that the construction be carried out in a manner that minimizes damage to the ecosystem.
An environmental impact assessment has not been carried out. This is against the Protection of Fauna and Flora Ordinance. Therefore, this is against the country's law. This is against international conventions signed by Sri Lanka on World Heritage sources. We have received information that this road is being constructed for a hotel and not for the people to travel. The government must provide an explanation on this. There are lands belonging to the Land Reforms Commission. They are forest lands. Attempts are underway to seize them as well. They attempted to abolish the Circular 5/2001 and are now attempting to seize the lands of the Land Reforms Commission. A gazette was signed by Maithripala Sirisena when he was president, annexing the forest lands in Singharaja to its forest reserve. That has not been published yet. Why is there a delay in that? This road is being constructed under the program to build 100,000 roads. We are only developing a road that was constructed through Singharaja. We are not expanding or constructing a new road. However, since there is a need to look into that due to this issue, we have decided to stop construction. We will hold talks with the relevant authorities and look into this matter if there is an issue. We have halted the construction of the road. We have informed the army to halt activities.
Negombo Chief Magistrate Sachindra Jayasuriya has ordered 4 suspects, including the superintendent of the Negombo prison, Andrew Sampaio, to be remanded until the 31st of this month. Now, this was in connection to a case filed against the suspects for irregular activities.
The Chief Magistrate, who rejected the bail applications of the suspects, said that if bail is granted, a suspect such as the former prison superintendent could exert influence on the witnesses appearing for the prosecution using their ties with powerful individuals. The Chief Magistrate also ordered the acting IGP to conduct an immediate inquiry into the delay in enforcing the arrest warrants against the 4 suspects and to submit a report to court. Deputy Solicitor General Dilip Piris, who appeared for the Attorney General, told court that instructions have been received to arrest Andrew Sampaio in connection to the drug racket in the Negombo prison and to take the necessary legal action after naming him as a suspect. The Deputy Solicitor General pointed out that an investigation has been launched into the assets, liabilities and property of the suspects under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act and the Bribery Act.
On that note, we wrap this edition of Prime Time News. Thank you very much for stopping by. I'm Joel Outspoon together with our interpreter Brandy Cruz. More news follows on our website, www.newsfirst.lk. Take care. Good night.